Hi, Mark here from SharePoint Snapple with a quick video on the installation and use of the Chatter for SharePoint solution. So first, what is Chatter for SharePoint? This is a product I designed to create integration points between Microsoft SharePoint and Salesforce Chatter. The solution contains a site scope feature that adds a web part, ribbon enhancements, and a federated search connector to SharePoint. The web part can display a specific Salesforce Chatter feed. This could be your company feed, a personal feed, or a group feed, and allows users to post, comment, and like and unlike posts and comments. The ribbon enhancements allow users to share pages, list items, and documents from SharePoint to Chatter. And the federated search connector allows standard and enterprise customers to integrate Chatter conversations within SharePoint search results. So the requirements for Chatter for SharePoint are pretty simple. You need to be running a supported edition of SharePoint Server 2010. This is Foundation, Standard, or Enterprise. This won't work with Office 365 right now, so this is really an on-prem solution. The user profile service needs to be configured and operational if you're running SharePoint Standard or Enterprise. Likewise, the SharePoint Search, Enterprise Search, or Fast Search services need to be configured, again, for Standard or Enterprise users. And from the Salesforce side, you need to be running Chatter Plus. Chatter-free accounts do not have API access at this time. Also, you want to make sure that your org is running version 24 or later, which shouldn't be a problem for most customers running Summer 12 right now. So for the rest of this video, we'll look at the prerequisites for SharePoint and Salesforce, how to install the solution, the configuration of the web part and the various features, and we'll go over some use cases. Okay, to start off with, we're going to do the prerequisites for Salesforce. To do this, you're going to want to log into your Salesforce org, which I've done so here. You're going to want to go into Setup, then go to, under App Setup, go to Develop, and Remote Access. And from here, we're going to create a new remote access application, or as I indicated in the documentation, what's called a REST entry point. So go ahead and click New. And there's 3 required fields here. So we're going to start with the application name and call it Chatter for SharePoint. Put in a contact email address. In this case, I'll be using mine. And the callback URL. As I indicate in the documentation, you want to set this to OOB, which stands for out of box. This changes the default behavior of Salesforce when it replies with the authorization token. Instead of trying to do an automatic post back to your site, this will create a form which will present the user with the authorization code, which they can then copy and paste into the SharePoint window as prompted. You feel free to fill out the rest of these fields if you so desire. We will not be using policies or authentication here, so go ahead and click Save. And when we're done, we're going to have 2 pieces of information, the consumer key and the consumer secret. So we're going to go ahead and copy these values and put them into Notepad so we can use them later. And I don't mind showing you the secret because we'll be deleting this REST entry point right after this demo. And as I indicate in the manual, please treat this information as confidential. With this information, users can programmatically access your Chatter org, so treat this as you would any ID and password. So now that we have that information, we can go ahead and take care of the SharePoint prerequisites. Now, depending on whether you're running Foundation or Standard or Enterprise, where the data gets stored in SharePoint differs slightly. For Foundation, we're going to be storing the data in a hidden list in a given site collection. If you're running Standard or Enterprise, the user's access and refresh token settings will be stored in the user profile service within 2 hidden fields. The way we set all that up is using command line utility that's provided with the tool. So once you've downloaded Chatter for SharePoint and unzipped it to a directory on one of your front ends, you'll see these files. You'll have the documentation, of course, the WSP, 2 command line utilities, the install Chatter search and prepare SharePoint. README and the Chatter federated search connector. So once you have those files, go ahead and open an administrative command prompt, and you'll want to be running these commands either as the farm admin or as an administrator that has administrative access to the user profile service if you are on standard or enterprise, or at least has site collection admin rights if you're going to be installing this on SharePoint Foundation. So we're going to run the prepare SharePoint utility, and we're going to give it our site URL. I'll go up here and I'll copy it out of our browser. We'll paste that in here, and we'll run that. You'll see it's identified SharePoint 2010 Enterprise, so it's going to be storing the properties in the user profile service, and that process was successful. Since we are running this on Enterprise, we'll also install the federated search connector, and that's done by the second command, which is install chatter search. And here you want to give it the URL of your search center. In this case, this farm is pretty simple. The search center is in the same web app, so I'm going to go ahead and paste the same URL in, and we'll run that. We'll see it's detected enterprise product. We'll see that it has found the search service application, which does need to be configured and operational, and it was successful. So now let's go and look at those changes. We'll open up Central Administration. We'll go look at our service applications. And we'll start with the user profile service, user properties, and if we scroll to the bottom, we will see two new fields, Chatter Settings and Chatter Update SharePoint. So those values are in place. They are not user readable. They're only accessible via the program or via a SharePoint administrator. So going back into our service applications, let's go into the search service application. Two things we want to do here. One, we want to confirm that the federated connector was indeed installed. So we're going to federated locations, and we'll see that we have a new location in here, Salesforce Chatter. Following the documentation, we want to go ahead and want to edit this location. Scroll down to the bottom. Under Restrictions and Credential Information, expand that, and make sure you choose Kerberos authentication under the user section. This is necessary to be able to pass the user's credentials to the connector so search results can be security trimmed. Go ahead and click OK. And that completes the configuration of the connector. There's a little more configurations necessary on your Search Center page to put the federated results in. We'll take a look at that after we finish the configuration of the web part. So now we're in a good place to go ahead and install the web part into our farm. There's a couple different ways to do this. If you go and look at the documentation on page 11, you'll see that you can install this using the command line. You can use PowerShell. Once it's actually installed into the farm, you can deploy it using a variety of mechanisms. You can use the command line again. You can use PowerShell. You can use central administration. So whatever your preference is, feel free to use it. There's no requirements here to use one over the other. Since we already have the command line open, we will just use the STS-ADM command to add the solution. Okay, and we choose the WSP. Operation completed successfully. And now we can go back over here into administration and we can deploy that solution. So we'll see that we now have it here. We'll go ahead, click on it, and choose deploy. We'll deploy to all web applications. Hit OK. And because this is a single WFE, it deploys rather quickly. So if you have a larger farm, it may take a few minutes to fully deploy the solution. So you can refresh this or check the timer job to make sure that it was successful. Okay, so now that we have that deployed, we can go ahead and begin the configuration of the solution. So let's go ahead and open up our site. In this case, we have a blank meeting workspace we're going to deploy the solution onto. I'm going to refresh this to make sure we're current because IIS did reset. Okay, so let's go over here and activate the solution. We'll go into Site Settings, go to our top level, Site Settings, Site Collection Features, and we'll see we have Chatter for SharePoint. We'll go ahead and activate that feature. And now we'll go back to our site, edit our page. We'll pick, in this case, the left web part zone to deploy this. In your categories, go ahead and scroll down. You'll find a new social category. Click on that, and you'll see Chatter for SharePoint, and click Add. So now we have the web part within our layout. Still needs some configuration. So we're going to go over here, go into Edit the web part. And on the right, we see a number of the standard sections for web part configuration: appearance, layout, advanced. Below advanced, we have some custom configuration for this web part: license, background, Salesforce, and configuration. The license section is for when you purchase the solution. You will take your farm ID value here, and you'll supply that with your payment information. With that, I'll be able to generate you a license key, which you will then apply here, which will activate all the features of the solution. Under background, this gives you the ability to customize the look of the web part to match your theme or branding. The top part of the web part has a color gradient. You can get to choose the starting color, and that will fade automatically to white for the rest of the web part. So feel free to play with the setting and adjust it to match your site's look and appearance. Salesforce is where we set all the initial properties to describe the connection to our org, which was that REST entry point. So let's go ahead and open up Notepad, and we'll grab the consumer key and secret. So we'll copy this out, and we'll paste that in, and you'll see that that is masked for your protection. Copy both those values. The application path is going to be your org's URL to Salesforce. In my case, it's https na2.salesforce.com. Make sure you use your correct value. Application name should remain the same unless you've changed it in the REST entry point, and the redirect URL should always be OOB. You should not change that at this time. Under configuration, this gives you some options for how the web part is going to behave. So there's three types of feeds that you can initially display. You can show the company feed, you can show your personal feed or the My feed, and you can show a group feed. For the group feed, you need to supply a group ID, and you can find the group ID by looking at a particular group within the Salesforce Chatter web application. So if I was to go into Chatter and I was to open up a group, if I looked at the URL, at the very end, you'll see a query parameter G equals and then a string. This string here is the group ID you will need to copy and paste into the web part properties to supply the default group to show. For this demonstration, we're going to use the company feed. Max items to display. This can be anywhere from 1 to 100 items. 25 is a nice starting number. You can adjust this if you feel that you either want to show more or less, or for performance reasons, if you want to show less, this is where you would adjust that. You can set the feed sort order either by created date or last modified date, again by your preference. And then the cache timeout, and this is set in minutes, minimum of a minute, a maximum of an hour. We found that 5 minutes is usually a good cache time to start with. The reason we're using aggressive caching here is because of the rate limit that Salesforce imposes on API calls, and that's 200 requests per user per hour. So we want to limit those requests as much as possible, and the web part does a great job at caching the content as well as images to reduce the number of individual calls it has to make using the Salesforce API. So you can play with this value to adjust how fresh your data is. Obviously, the web part does automatically refresh the page in order to keep the content current, and it uses Ajax to do that. So you can play with this value here to find what works best for you. The next two, default Salesforce user ID and password, deal with the read-only access to the feed. So if you supplied an API-enabled user ID and password here, the web part would default to showing the company feed in a read-only mode. So users wouldn't be able to comment, things like that. To use this feature, you have to create an API-enabled account, and you also have to generate an access token, which gets appended to your regular password. So you can't simply use any Salesforce ID and password here. You will cause it to get locked out. So I would take a look at the documentation on this, see if it's a feature you want to use. Normally, for the normal operation of the web part, you're not going to have these values populated. And then below that, we have a few additional options. Show chatter link. This option will display a URL at the bottom of the feed to take users to the full chatter experience. If they're not logged in, of course, they would have to log into it. But that gives you an easy link to send your users over to Chatter. Use fast load. This option will enable Ajax to render render your page faster even when the data is already cached. This can be helpful to improve the appearance of the page load times. If you have a lot of data in the cache. The web part always uses Ajax when loading for the first time, so your page load times are not encumbered by it. Again, this is a matter of preference whether or not you use this or not, so you can adjust that here. And last is debug. You would turn this on if you were troubleshooting a problem. This will write out individual user logs to the 14 logs hive that you can then take a look at, see what errors are coming back from the web part. And if you're working with me on a solution, very likely I would have you turn this on and send me the logs so I could take a look and see what's going on. So we'll leave that off for now. And we'll go ahead and click OK. And we'll stop editing. Now we'll see that the web part is ready. It's telling us that my account, Mark Davis, is not authorized on Chatter yet. And since there's no default credentials specified, it has nothing to show us. So it's asking us to authorize. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Click on the link. You'll get this authorization modal window. This describes what the process is going to be. Once we click on Begin Authorization, it's going to send us over to Salesforce. If we're not logged in already, it's going to ask us to do so. And then it's going to ask us to approve the Chatter for SharePoint application. We click Approve. We get a authorization code, which we will then paste into this area and click Save. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm already logged in, so it's just asking me for my permission. I'm going to say Allow. And I get a verification code. Just a note, the code is longer than the box is wide, so you want to make sure that you copy the entire code out. And we'll go back to our SharePoint window, and we will paste it in, and click Save. The web part will now confirm our authorization, and refresh the page, and we'll see that we get a message here saying it's been completed successfully. We can now collaborate on Chatter from SharePoint. The page refreshes, and here we have a look at the feed. Now, I'm using the evaluation version of the web part. This is the version that's on the blog right now. A couple of limitations with this solution. It's good for 15 days, and it will only show the most recent 3 items in the feed. Apart from that, all the other functionality is completely the same, just time sensitive. So here, we'll show you some of the basic operation of the web part. As you see, we have the ability to post new comments. So we'll say, hello world. We'll go ahead and share that. You'll see that our comment is now in the feed. I can comment on this post, and I can also like it. Now from here, if we were to go back over to Salesforce, go back into Chatter, we'll see the same thing. So here's my post. It's liked by me. Here's a comment that I've made on it. And it's all the same data, and it tells us that that came from Chatter for SharePoint. Now, the web part is just one method of collaborating with Salesforce Chatter. The second is the ribbon integration, and you're looking at some of that right here. So when I'm on a given page or list or library, I have a new button in the ribbon, and where this button lives depends on what you're looking at. Since we're looking at a web part page, it appears in the Page tab. So if I was to click on Share on Chatter, you'll see that I get a window here that's going to automatically pre-populate the site that I'm on and the URL. And I can then choose to add some comments about this link, or I can just go ahead and post it directly. Say your update was posted successfully. And if we refresh this, we'll see that I just shared a link to this site, and then it provides the URL to take the user to that content. If I was on a list or a library, so if we jump over here, if I was to open up a document library, and I wanted to share a particular list item or a document, I can simply choose that item. Under the Documents or List ribbon, you'll find Share on Chatter. I can click on that. You'll see that it pre-populates the selected item. I can put a comment in. And I can go ahead and share that. And you'll see that it was updated successfully. And if I was to go back and look at the web part, we'll see that it is posted. And that link will take us right to that particular document. So that's the basic functionality of the web part. Now, for standard and enterprise users, the last bit of configuration deals with the federated search connector. First thing we want to do is we want to confirm that the configuration for the web part that we've just done is in our web config, and more importantly, is in the web config for our search center, because that may not be the same web application that you did this initial configuration on. So we're going to go ahead and look at our virtual directory for this web application here. I'm going to open up the web config. I'm going to scroll down to the app settings and show you what you need. So at the bottom, you're going to find a new set of keys that were added by the solution when we configured it. If these keys were already present in the web app, it's not going to modify it. So if you change your Salesforce configuration at any time, you create a new REST entry point, or you change orgs, for example, you're going to want to update the consumer key and secret in all of your web configs. So you should have a method to update this and synchronize them across all the web applications that you wish to share the same key and secret. So you'll see that we have them here. This information is correct. This is what we use to configure this. And since this is the same web app that's hosting my search center, we're okay. If it wasn't the case, you're going to want to copy this information, paste it into the web config for the appropriate web application. Make sure you do an IIS reset to get the settings applied. So we're good there. So we're going to go ahead and open up our search center. And you're going to want to do this with an ID that has site collection admin rights on the search center, because we're going to be modifying the search results page. So let's go ahead and open that up. I'm going to do a quick search here to take us there. And now that we're here, we're going to go ahead and edit this page. Now for this demo, I'm going to put the federated results into the right zone. Of course, you can put this in any part of the layout you wish, whatever works best for you. If you've customized this page, as many do, you may have different zones here. So again, you can feel free to place this anywhere on the page that you feel is reasonable. I'll go ahead and add the web part. You can use any of the web parts that support federated results. So we'll go over here to search, and we're going to pull back federated results. Hit OK, hit add. And now we're going to go ahead and configure this web part. So we're going to edit it. We're going to switch this over to Salesforce Chatter. You can adjust the display properties, so how many results you get back, then with the characters in the summary, all of the common things. We're going to go ahead and adjust the appearance of this. We're going to call this Chatter Conversations. And again, adjust these as you see fit. The only option I will steer you away from is Ajax. The connector does not support Ajax asynchronous updates or refreshes. You will not get any results back. In fact, I may actually slow down the page load time. So I'll, again, steer you away from using any of those. Go ahead and click OK. And now we'll go ahead and save. Now, if you this will work for me because I'm the one that edited the page, but in order for your other users to see the results of this, you're going to want to save this, check it in, and publish it. So make sure you do that, otherwise users will not be seeing these changes. So we'll go ahead and save and close. Page will refresh, and you'll see that I now have Chatter search results that are related to my search query. And I can go ahead and I can click on these links, and that will take me right into Chatter. So that is the basic configuration of the web part and solution. I hope this video was useful. I encourage you to go ahead and check out the solution on SharePointSnapple.com. Click on the Chatter for SharePoint link. Please download the solution, take a look at the documentation, and feel free to contact me. My email address is in the documentation. You can reach me at markdavis, MARCDAVIS, at comcast.net. Again, you can reach me also through the blog. Feel free to comment, and I check it often. I'll be sure to reply to all of your comments. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.